Welcome to another episode of the Boxing Lockdown, powered by SA Boxing Talk. I have the two gentlemen, obviously, in the house, in the Zoom house with us. It's Cyril and Hayden. We have a special guest, former WBO junior welterweight champion of the world, Chris Algieri. He's joining us from New York. It's really great to have you, Chris, and welcome to the Boxing Lockdown.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure. Great to see you guys.
Chris, I wanna go back 6 years, just over 6 years ago. You got a chance of a lifetime, and you fought for the World Championship against Ruslan Provodnikov.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you had a disastrous first round. Not a bad first round, a disastrous first round. You got caught with a left hook, and you almost did a somersault over.
Mm-hmm.
And so you rolled back, and it was like you got thumbed, and your eye started swelling instantaneously. You were then under pressure, and you got dropped, and you basically took a knee again because of the swelling on your eye. At that moment, in that first round, what was going through your mind?
Damn, he hits as hard as they say he does. So that, I mean, like you said, that first round was absolutely disastrous. That was not part of the plan, obviously. We weren't trying to trade with him that soon. That was something that we planned for a couple of rounds down the line once he got a little slower and once we got to really dig in his body and slow him down physically, sap some of that strength away from him. But I saw an opportunity. He seemed so easy to hit in the first round that I skipped ahead about 4 or 5 rounds and went to trade left hooks with him. His was bigger, like you said, the way he punches, he slid his knuckle and thumb right in between basically my tear duct and my eye, broke my nose in 2 places, broke my orbital in 3 places immediately. I mean, as soon as that happened, I got hit. And I wasn't that rocked, honestly. I was just such a shocking, painful. A lot of times you don't really feel pain during a fight. You get hit, you get stunned. You don't feel like it hurts, even though you're not completely aware or control of your body. That punch, I was in control of my body, but the pain was just really shocking, and my whole side of my face went numb. And actually, when I first got up from the first knockdown, I couldn't see out of either eye. So I was pretty much, everything was all fuzzy with both eyes. So I had no vision. That's actually why I took the knee. I basically had the ref in front of me and I can see kind of his outline. And then Ruslan comes thundering towards me and I can just see him. I couldn't defend against the punches. That's why I took the knee. Because I know the punches that you don't see is the one that's going to hurt you the most. So thankfully, while I was taking that knee and I was getting my 8 count, the vision in my good eye, my other eye, my left eye, came back. And I could see the referee in my face. And then I said, okay, I need to just go back to what the game plan was and box this guy. And honestly, I think I won the second half of the first round. I went right back to the game plan, something that we knew we could do all night long. I just made a mistake. And in boxing, you make a mistake, you pay for it.
And sticking with that fight, you carried on, and as the rounds went by, you were outlanding him.
Mm-hmm.
What was going through your mind, like after that disastrous first round? Now you're basically outlanding him every single round. How much confidence did you pick up from that?
Yeah, I was very confident going into the fight, and then I was mad at myself after the first round because I took that shortcut, made a mistake, got hit, and now had to deal with that injury for the rest of the night. So a lot of those early rounds was actually me being mad at myself and being angry and kind of beating myself up over it. So I wasn't thinking so much about even, oh, wow, I'm winning this fight, I'm back in it. I was thinking like, you need to make up for that to yourself, as if I was my own coach yelling at me. Like, you made a mistake. That was dumb. Like, you need to get that back. You need to go to work. And then it was probably around 7th or 8th round. And I'm like, oh man, I think I'm winning this fight. Like I've got his timing down. I have his rhythm. Even though I was blind from this side of my head, I was still rolling under his shots. I just had his rhythm at that point. And I'm a rhythm fighter. Once I find a guy's rhythm, and I'm an off rhythm guy, so I was able to kind of keep resetting him so he can never really hone in on me again. And there's no bigger confidence boost in the world than having good defense and when a guy can't hit you. So I was definitely riding high as we were going into the later third of the fight.
Chris, I remember, in continuing with the trajectory of this, after you had beaten Ruslan, you got the Manny Pacquiao offer, and I remember watching your sort of the documentary between you and Pacquiao, the build up to the fight, and it was such a massive opportunity for you at that stage. You're an undefeated fighter, fighting outside of the United States for the first time as well, I believe. Manny Pacquiao, that fight, was it non-refusable? You couldn't turn that sort of a fight down?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, they started talking about it in the post-fight press conference for Ruslan. Bob Arum got up there, and he literally, the first thing he said, he's like, "I want to see this kid fight Manny Pacquiao." First question I get, "Hey, would you fight Manny Pacquiao?" And literally, my eye is completely shut. They're telling me I need to go to the hospital. I'm like, "No, I'm having my press conference. I got my sunglasses on." And they asked me if I want to fight Manny Pacquiao. I said, "Yeah, of course." Like, "Would you fight him in China?" I said, "Yeah, sure. Is there a ring there? I'll fight him anywhere." And that was pretty much it. That might as well have been the deal right there. And it was just an opportunity that you can't pass up. Like you said, opportunities in this game don't come around that often, especially for a guy like me. I didn't have a big promotion behind me. I didn't have a big push by the media or even people around me. My first TV fight was earlier that year. I fought on ESPN in February. That was my very first time being on TV. My next fight is the world title fight on HBO against Ruslan, right before the Pacquiao fight, which is on pay-per-view. So, I mean, the trajectory was straight up. And I was riding high. I was confident, going forward after the Ruslan fight, after really those two wins that year were both big. So, in terms of being a fighter, the opportunity to fight a living legend was, I mean, undeniable. Could never pass that up.
Chris, I wanted to ask you, I mean, you were WBO junior welterweight champ. You went up in weight to fight Pacquiao. You're a nutritionist. Everyone knows about your book that's just out. I want to speak to you about that later. But you missed the weight when you fought Pacquiao. What happened and why?
Honestly, so I was always big on like hitting it by the 0.0. Like if the weight is 147, I want to be 147.0. If it's 140, I want to be 140. And my coaches would always be like, be careful. Every scale is different. You never know. I was under the weight the morning of, and I literally had a cup of coffee. So that's why it was a little 4-ounce cup of coffee. And honestly, that's what I was over. Every scale is different. You got to give it a little leeway. I learned my lesson there. I literally just went to the bathroom, came back and stepped on the scale and was a pound under. So it wasn't so much, not making the weight as it was just a misstep. Probably being a little overconfident, not thinking that scales have a little bit of give and a little bit of leeway. And I wasn't really concerned about that. So, that was a little embarrassing for me, but at the same time, I knew I made the weight. It wasn't an issue. Like you said, I moved up in weight. I could have made 40 that night.
Speaking of the Pacquiao fight, your trainer came under a lot of criticism after the fight.
Mm-hmm.
How did that make you feel?
Honestly, I didn't think so much about it. It was my first loss after the fight. And, I wasn't happy with what happened during the fight. Obviously, I wasn't really happy with what was going on in the corner. The instruction I was getting, especially when I went back and watched the fight and kind of listened to everything. In the heat of the whole moment is one thing, but then when you go back and look at it and you see the instruction that you're getting, and him and I were we weren't speaking the same language that night. And, so that was a bigger issue for me in terms of, what's going on home base rather than what other people are saying. I don't really care what other people are saying. At the end of the day, this is my career. I'm the guy who's in there. So, any kind of heat or flack that he got, that was on him and whatever everybody else said. For me, I just had my first loss. I lost and I was really upset for several months after that. So I didn't care much about what was going on from what other people were saying or from, about the coaching and whatnot.
I want to jump to a couple of potential topics in terms of fights for you now. I know you're talking about fights against Maurice Hooker, but of course he's recently lost against Jose Ramirez. Is he still someone you want to fight, or is the WBO world title sort of the one that you want?
Yeah, I was Hooker became into the crosshairs more because of the WBO title belt, and we had a title eliminator. So that last fight with Tommy Coyle and myself was a title eliminator in order to get that WBO shot against Maurice Hooker. So winning that fight was a big deal for me. And I had a plan to go out there and make a real statement, which I did. So I was expecting that to be the Hooker fight. But listen, an opportunity comes up for unification. Unification is good for the sport. So I understand if that fight comes up, the Jose Ramirez and Maurice Hooker fight, that's the opportunity that those guys got to take. And so I just expected to get the winner from there. And I honestly expected Maurice Hooker to win. So I went to Dallas to watch the fight live and to try and wedge myself into getting whoever won that night. And again, it would have been a lot easier to make if it was Maurice Hooker, him being the WBO champ coming in, me having the number one contender status or the title eliminator status. But as boxing goes, you never know what's going to happen on fight night. Hooker loses, and Ramirez breaks his hand in the fight. And when you have two titles, you have two mandatory defenses, right? So it kind of put me on the in the back of the line, for that title shot. So that was pretty a pretty upsetting point of my recent career. And nobody's fought. Ramirez hasn't fought. He had hand surgery. He came back. He's supposed to come back and fight Postal recently, but that COVID happened. So it's a strange time. Everyone's kind of on the outs when it comes to knowing what's next. But yeah, for the most part, that it was really targeting the WBO belt more than targeting any particular fighter.
Chris, you stayed at welterweight after the Pacquiao loss, and you fought Amir Khan and you fought Errol Spence. The drop back down to junior welterweight, is it because you feel bigger and stronger, or were you chasing bigger fights at welterweight 147?
I never needed to go to 47. It was an opportunity. So after the Pacquiao fight, I always wanted to fight Amir Khan. And I've people always ask like, hey, who do you want to fight? And I never get to fight who I want to fight. That fight got offered, and I was like, yeah, I'll fight him wherever. I think that would be a grerait fight. I think stylistically matching up would be really good. I was a big fan of his style. He's absolutely phenomenal. A phenomenal fighter from the amateurs all the way through the pros, multiple-time world champion. So for me, that was such a huge opportunity to go up a few pounds was worth it. And so we had a lot of opportunities just kind of arise at the welterweight position. Like I said about opportunities, I never miss an opportunity. When there's something offered to me, if it makes sense and it makes dollars, then I'm in. So for me, once I had those couple welterweight fights, I really, it's just a big, strong guy. Amir Khan, bone, and then Spence is huge. So I'm in the ring with this guy. I'm like, you know what? I can beat most of the welterweights in the world, but I consider myself an elite world-class guy. I want to be the world champion any weight class that I'm in. And when you got guys like Keith Thurman and Errol Spence and Sean Porter at welterweight, they're just bigger men. So I don't walk around where those guys do. These guys are in the 60s, 170s. I've heard guys up to 180 pounds who fight at welterweight. I've never seen those numbers. So for me, it made more sense that I can strip down a little bit more, get to 140. And like you said, I can be the bigger man at that weight. And I don't have to deal with these bigger concussive punchers. I am someone who is very, very conscious of brain health and body health and maintaining, this machine that I have to carry around for the rest of my life. So it just makes more sense in so many different levels for me to fight at 140. Not to say that I wouldn't fight at 47 again, but 140 is definitely where I feel more comfortable.
And then going back to the Manny Pacquiao fight, it was, as you said earlier, it was the first time on pay-per-view. It was like the trajectory of your career just shot up. What was it like going into that? I mean, it was a huge build-up, more press attention. What was that like?
It was awesome. Honestly, it was so much fun. I had a great time. The press tour, we were in 7 different cities. I got to meet so many people and travel the world. It was such an amazing opportunity. When people ask me about the Manny Pacquiao fight, I call it the Manny Pacquiao experience, because there was so much going on prior to actually stepping in the ring with the man. Yeah, I mean, I was living in Las Vegas for 10 weeks doing my training camp, thanks to Bob Arum, who set me up in a beautiful hotel suite in the Venetian and made me a gym down there. So I had this opportunity that was, fighters don't get that now. This was like a throwback to the 70s type of situation. I was doing open media workouts once a week, doing so much press. And honestly, that stuff always kind of picked me up. It didn't really, especially at that point in my career where I was so young and hungry and brash and excited about everything. So for me, it was it upped everything, upped my training, it upped my focus and my desire. But yeah, it was an incredible experience to to travel and see people and see what boxing does on the world scale. You know, I'd fought my hometown most of my career, literally down the block from where I grew up. So for me to go across the world and visit gyms in Macau and China and meet kids that are watching my fights was absolutely tremendous.
I like that you mentioned that you fought most of your fights just down the road from you. I mean, I think if research has correct, it's 26 out of 27 fights that you've actually fought in New York. I think that's remarkable. Do you ever want to fight in another state in the United States?
Sure, I'll fight anywhere. Honestly, I'm not partial to fighting at home. Obviously it helps. I think a lot of the promoters have always used me because I'm a ticket seller. So when I'm a popular guy, I can sell tickets on Long Island and New York. So fighting in the Barclays Center, fighting in Madison Square Garden, fighting on these Long Island shows when I was coming up was always made sense from a promoter standpoint. But in terms of fighting other places, I would love to fight over in the UK. They have such a tremendous boxing community and fan base. It's different than it is in the States, man. It's people just, you know, especially now with what's going on, people just, you know, they're not going to come out to fights like that. But yeah, anywhere in the States, you know, fight in Las Vegas. I never really have dreams of fighting in other places per se, because like I said, with the Manny Pacquiao thing, is there a ring there? I mean, we're boxing. It doesn't really matter what, you know, what place we end up in, as long as we're in the ring, you know, boxing under Queensberry rules, then cool. But yeah, location doesn't matter as much, but I'm willing to fight anywhere. I've always kind of been that mentality.
Chris, your energy just seems to be, you know, I'm here and I'm having fun and I'm going to make the most of it. And it sounds like you're making the most of it. But you're also a former world kickboxing champion. A lot of people don't know that. Now, which was easier for you? Which has been easier for you?
So, really good question. I don't know. I don't know if I have an answer to say which was easier. I love kickboxing. I think it's a phenomenal sport. It's one of my favorite things to watch. Still love to train it. Still love kicking. Still love doing, you know, drills with guys. I mean, at the highest level, kickboxing is a beautiful thing. You know, it's a power sport, but the best highest level world class guys have great hands, good head movement. You know, they have very much of a boxing style to them to add to their kicks. So it definitely helped in terms of being technical. You know, learning on the job and kind of picking up new skills, and also fighting in front of people in the one-on-one aspect of boxing and kickboxing. You know, that helped a lot. But the talent pool of boxing is so much bigger. You know, you've got Manny Pacquiao's. You don't have Manny Pacquiao's in kickboxing. You know, the guys, they're not making life-changing, exorbitant amounts of money. Especially when I was kickboxing, there wasn't a whole lot of money, especially, you know, this side of the world. But even in the UK and over in the Netherlands, and those Dutch fighters, they were making some money, but nothing like, you know, like boxers make. So the talent pool for boxing is so much bigger because there's so many more guys that are willing to give everything of their all in order to pursue this sport, because their money can change their lives and the lives of their children and grandchildren. Kickboxing, not so much. It's a harder road in terms of that. The injuries in kickboxing were brutal. I don't miss getting kicked. I don't miss breaking shin bones and toes and, you know, fractured elbows, in which I've had all of them. Yeah, I mean, I broke my hands, my elbow, my knee, my shins, my foot, my feet a billion times. So yeah, I don't miss that part. I don't miss getting kicked, but I do miss kicking people, because when you have other weapons, it's just, I'm a thinker, right? I'm always thinking. When you have other weapons, you can set so many things up. So kickboxing, I used to knock everybody out with head kicks. That was like my thing, because there was so much target to set people up. Hit them low here, hit them high there, kick them up there. Bang, doesn't see it. Guy goes to sleep. So in that sense, you know, that part of it was fun, and maybe that was a little easier, you know, to kind of, with all those weapons, it's just hard to defend everything. You know, it's easier to find holes. Whereas boxing, you've got guys who have been mastering 2 weapons for their entire lives. And that's what people ask you. Why didn't you go to MMA? You're a kickboxer, you wrestled in high school, you're a high level wrestler and grappler. Why would you go to boxing? I'm like, well, why would I want to water these down and add weapons when I can take things away and really hone in and focus on these 2 weapons and make these the best thing possible? So instead of diluting my skill set, I felt like I wanted to really knuckle down, kind of pun intended, and really get into the nitty gritty of a single aspect of the striking sports and try and master that the best that I could in the time that I had.
That's quite interesting. But with the transition, as you said, you went against boxers, guys who had been in the sport for pretty much all their lives.
Mm-hmm.
How difficult was that transition from kickboxing to boxing?
Honestly, it's still difficult. It's still difficult. There's still aspects of my game and other guys' games that are that bleed over. I don't remember who I was in the gym with recently, and actually just a few months back, sparring one of the young undefeated guys in our gym, and I was moving against the ropes, and he went to throw a right hand to the body, and I like jumped back and kind of pulled my hips away and was right back in and ready to counter. He was stopped. He's like, "What was that?" And I was like, "Ah," and everybody was like, "Yeah, that was an interesting move." It's kind of a kickboxing move when a guy goes to kick your legs out. You kind of pop back and you get right back into position. And so it'll pop out from time to time, you know, my kickboxing background or my martial arts background. But yeah, it's an interesting thing. Fight sports, you know, there's a lot of carryover, a lot of learning on the job. But yeah, the transition was really tough. It was easier for me because I'm from New York and we didn't have we had no really world-class kickboxers here for me to spar with or work with. So I was going to boxing gyms and sparring with them. I would go in and I'd put on sneakers and I would box. And that's how I get my sparring for big fights when I was kickboxing. So I was sparring high-level boxers preparing for my kickboxing fights. And I forgot who the first coach was who looked at me and he goes, "You know, you got a lot of boxer in you. You should try this out one day." And I was like, I'd like to. My coach is like, "No, let's do this." that doesn't work out for kickboxers. I was like, all right. I always wanted to though. But yeah, I think that really helped with the transition for me was all the work that I had gotten with boxers while still kickboxing.
Going to another sort of preview of fight documentary, Daniel Jacobs, with him coming into the world title contention and well with him fighting at the elite level, I should rather say, on a consistent basis for world titles, you became a nutritionist for him. You came on board with him and sort of added to his team. How did that all come together? Are you guys still operating together?
Yeah, so the nutrition aspect, I was actually working as a nutritionist throughout my entire career. I just didn't work with a lot of fighters. I had a handful of guys that I was working with. I worked with many more mixed martial artists, MMA fighters. I was coming from a MMA gym on Long Island. So I was working with a bunch of guys that were getting into the UFC, who were on smaller productions and whatnot. Not a whole lot of boxers, a few guys, amateur level, a couple pros early on. And it was, I guess, probably during the Pacquiao camp, where I was really cooking a lot. I had a real industrial kitchen in my training camp, and I was cooking and preparing all my meals, which I always have for all my camps. But now I actually had some money and I could get good stuff. So I started making really, really good dishes and was starting to post them on my social media. And that's where I kind of got the idea where I was like, man, I should post this, do this more. I'd like to, I write down some of these recipes and whatnot. And I think just from the strength of my social media, that kind of gave people the idea, fighters the idea that that's something I do. And I've known Danny for years. We didn't exactly come up together because obviously I came up in kickboxing, but we were in such a tight circle of pro fighters early on. We both won our first world titles around the same time, and we were at a bunch of award ceremonies in New York City together, in New York together, and we always see each other in gyms. We were always very cordial and friendly, and we'd speak on social media and whatnot. And I think he might have said something to his manager about, man, Algieri, that guy can really cook. And I think he's a nutritionist too. They were looking for a new nutritionist. So his manager reached out to me and said, would this be something you'd be interested in? And I'm like, honestly, yeah, I've never really thought about it. And I know Danny. So that would make the transition that much easier. And I think that was a big part of it, was having the relationship with Daniel. So, I mean, when I'm in camp, I'm with a guy, I'm there for 2 months and I see you every day. I'm the first person you see in the morning. I'm probably the last person you're going to see at night. Because that role expanded from just preparing food to training together, sparring together, to doing our lifts together. So if I'm going to be with somebody all day long, I need to like them too. I can't just, 2 months is a long time just to do work with somebody you don't like.
Chris, I actually followed that, and you're a big avocado fan, and I got to tell you, the avocado stuff works, man. And you've just come out with a book, and nutrition book, and it's basically for fighters. There you go. That obviously was motivated by the fact that fighters were reaching out to you, asking you for advice. Obviously on social media platform, I see that you do a lot of shakes. You like the NutriBullets, big fan of that too.
Mm-hmm.
How is that going? And do you see yourself going into that career when you say goodbye to boxing?
Yeah. So the book, I mean, it's called The Fighter's Kitchen, but really anybody could use it. It's healthy, easy, nutritious meals. I'm not a chef, and I try and tell people that all the time. Like, nothing in there is going to be too difficult because I'm not classically trained. I didn't go to culinary school. Majority of the recipes that I developed was while I was living in training camps, and I was living in hotel rooms. I trained at Robert Garcia's gym in Oxnard, and I was there 4 camps in a row back in like 2011, 2012. And I was literally living in a hotel room for 2-3 months at a time. And pretty much all the time that I wasn't in the gym or on the road, I was preparing my meals and cooking and kind of owning my skills in the kitchen. And this came about. The publisher actually reached out to me. They said, "Hey, we've got this idea for a book. We wanted you to author it. What do you think?" And I'm like, "Man, I've been doing this all my life. Let's rock." And it was an amazing experience. So humbling, the amount of work that goes into producing a book, but it was 100% worth it. I am so happy with the product and how it came out. And the feedback has been tremendous. But in terms of working as a nutritionist post my own boxing competitiveness, I don't think so. I don't think that's where my skill set really lies when it comes to staying within the field. I think that I definitely have teaching as a professor at the collegiate level in my future post boxing. Doing research, I think, would be, in nutrition science, especially related to sport, is definitely something that I'm very interested in. And then in terms of I want to produce more books, it's just so time consuming to work specifically with an individual or an athlete. I think I can help a lot more people, a much broader population of people, if I kind of expand past the athlete and look to more healthy eating for people who are into fitness and immunity and whatnot.
Chris, looking now, are you 36 years old? How much longer do you want to carry on fighting?
I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know how much more I got left in me. I definitely feel like I have some big fights still in here, and I'm still hungry to train and to get out there and to fight. But that can end at any time. If I wake up tomorrow and I don't want to go train or go for a run or can't see myself getting ready for a fight, then I'm done. It's over. And I'm 100% okay with that. I'm very satisfied with what I've done in my career. Boxing has done a lot for me. Of the sport, I don't want to get to the point where I hate it, and which I think a lot of fighters do. The bitterness of a retired fighter can be a really ugly thing, and I don't want to overstay my welcome to get to that point. So I'm really just basing it on my body and my psychological mindset. As my career is still progressing in this last part of my career. But I don't know, time will tell. But right now I'm still having fun. I miss fight weeks. I miss training camps. I'm looking forward to getting back to work.
Now, when you were competing at welterweight, and this is more for the South African viewers than anyone else, there was talk in the South African media about maybe Chris Algieri versus Chris Van Heerden in the welterweight division. I don't know if you've heard of Chris Van Heerden and watched his fights, but I know just for the South Africans, how do you think a fight between you and him would have gone at the welterweight division?
Yeah, I know Chris very well. We actually speak pretty often. He's a great guy. He's out in LA, and we actually are in some of the same circles. I know his manager very well, and there was talk of us fighting, and it was going to be actually in New York. Obviously I always fight in New York, and his manager was not happy about that opportunity. So that kind of got pushed aside. But honestly, that would be an interesting fight. We're both very technical. Chris throws a lot of punches. I can throw a lot of punches. I've been known to do that in certain fights. My style is it's a little funny because I a lot of times I fight in a style that helps me win the fight. So I don't really have a distinct style. A lot of times people are like, oh, well, he's a pure boxer, but then, I'm tracking down Amir Khan for 12 rounds, or walking down, Tommy Coyle, or I'm not a puncher and then I stop a guy. So I fight in a way that best serves me with what I have in front of me. So stylistically for that fight, it's an interesting matchup, especially him being, a southpaw. He's tall too, long southpaw. He's a tricky guy. He's a talented guy.
Chris, you and I met in Malaysia.
Mm-hmm.
We were both there for the Manny Pacquiao fight against what's the guy's name? Matisse, yeah, Lucas Matisse.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a role kind of weird for me to see you there as an ex-Manny Pacquiao opponent and then now doing color commentary. Mm-hmm. And you're doing some stuff now for Mashroom. How do you feel about doing that now in this part of your career?
I love it. It's a lot of fun. I get the best seat in the house, and I get to tell all you guys what I think about what I'm seeing, whether you agree with me or not. It's something I've been doing, sitting in my living room on my couch since I was probably 12 years old, watching fights and talking about them. So it's very fun. Like I said, I am a fan of the sport. I'm a fan of boxers. I love being around the sport any way that I can. So this is another opportunity for me to be there, to get a little bit of that buzz of fight week, to be around the big fights. And now, in my role is expanding into doing, like you had mentioned, the Matchroom stuff, where I'm actually interviewing fighters, and then we're doing YouTube type television shows. It's great. It's a great way to connect with a lot of fighters who I may not have had the opportunity to kind of sit in a room with and chat with. And now I can. So, and like I said, I think we all are fans of each other. We all know so much about each other. I always run into guys and they tell me everything about me, and I'm like, man, I could tell you everything about you. And that's just the way we are. We're in such a small pool at the elite level that I think we, deep down, we probably all know a lot about it, each one of us. And so I do really enjoy the new role, and I'm looking forward to kind of expanding on that and getting out there as much as I can.
And then now, looking at two fights two guys you've fought before, going back to Manny Pacquiao and Errol Spence. Mm-hmm. Who would you say was the bigger puncher and the better fighter overall?
Good question. I get asked the harder puncher question a lot, and it's so hard to say because everybody's different. Everybody hits hard. Let me put that out there. Everybody hits hard. People are like, oh, he doesn't hit hard, right? I'm like, no. People are like, Amir Khan, he doesn't hit hard. I'm like, no, he hits really hard. He's just got a lot of knockouts. He hurts people. Punches hurt, and especially when you're a high level fighter and that's what you do for a living. Everybody can punch. But in terms of they're so different. Manny is very explosive, obviously, super fast, explosive, powerful. I actually thought Amir Khan was quicker. He threw out combinations faster. Manny's first step is really fast, but Manny's just got heavy hands, hard. He hits hard. He's explosive, and he hits you with punches you don't see. And like I mentioned earlier in the interview, punch you don't see is the one that hurts you the most. So Manny hurt me way more. I was way more rocked when I got dropped by Manny than when I fought Errol Spence. Errol Spence just throws a lot of punches, and he's just physically strong. He's a big guy. He's a much better technical fighter than I think people give him credit for, which he showed in the Mikey Garcia fight. He boxed really well in that fight. His ability to use range and in and out from that high-level amateur experience really shows. And I saw that when I fought him. He fought me in a very, 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 very smart way, in a way that I think was one of the best versions of Errol Spence that we've seen. And that night, I didn't have what I needed in order to make that fight competitive. I needed my legs. I needed to be able to move. I needed to box him. And that didn't happen that night. So, he was a much bigger, stronger, more formidable guy than I expected when I fought him. But yeah, that's an interesting matchup, those two fighting. I think there's a lot of question marks related to the car accident of Errol Spence and what kind of person he's going to be now. What kind of fighter, what kind of person. There's going to be some kind of residual effects of something like that, and maybe not physical or even neurological. Maybe just honestly just PTSD, shock, and it's a life changing moment. And you never know how anyone's going to deal with that. If you asked me before the accident, I had Errol Spence winning the fight against Manny Pacquiao. Now, Manny's got a shot, and especially the way Manny looked in the Keith Thurman fight. That guy just turns back the clock. It's amazing for him at 41 or 42 years old to go out and beat up undefeated world champions at welterweight. You know, Keith Thurman is a good fighter, been a world champion for a long time, undefeated. Manny beat him up. I know that there was a split decision. I didn't see that. I thought that Manny Pacquiao put on a brilliant performance and just tough, walking through shots. That guy is trouble for any welterweight in the world. And you can never count him out, you know, Manny Pacquiao, that is. So it's a very interesting matchup. I would lean towards youth. I would lean towards Errol Spence. I think that he's got a long trajectory in terms of his career. But like I said, since the accident, you don't know. There's a lot of question marks around that fight and that matchup.
Chris, we see that boxing is coming back again. Sort of boxing is back, so to speak. You know, obviously after this tragic virus has put everything on sort of hold. Where does this leave you right now? Have you got, because it's been like almost a year since you've been in the ring. Where does this? Have you got plans in order in place that are coming through? Or are you just gonna see what's sort of available?
It's really hard to have plans right now in boxing, you know, because I don't know how it is, how COVID has been affecting you guys. We're all over the place. Like New York is really locked down. I think New York fighters are really getting the worst of this because we can't go to gyms, we can't train, we can't spar. You know, other places are a lot more open. I don't think we're going to see a lot of the big name guys fight early on when this thing first is kind of reopening. I think we're going to see a lot of the up and coming guys, the guys who probably need to fight, the guys who need the money to fight, the guys who need to feed their family, and they're you know I don't want to call them jobbers, but the guys who are on their way up, who need to make money, you know, every couple of months in order to stay afloat, who eventually will get there. You're not going to see the pay-per-view guys, the world-class guys, the world champion guys, because they're going to go, oh, you need me to fight in 4 weeks without training? I got to start sparring now. I got to get my sparring partners in right now, and we got to make sure we don't get sick, and we're going to put my belt on the line. Nah, I can wait. I got my $1 million in the bank I can sit on. You know, I think we're going to see a lot more of the not lower level in terms of skill, but like the guys who haven't gotten to that premier stage yet to start out the fights.
Chris, the one fight that you wanted against whoever and you couldn't get, who was it and why?
I wanted to fight Lomachenko. I think that I love his style. I love the way that he fights. And I was hoping that I would be able to win a world title at 140, and then he would possibly look for another weight class to jump up to, you know, 140 a fight. But he stated that even 135 was kind of too big for him when he fought Linares. So that was kind of out. That was just one of those fights, just looking at him and his style and what he brings to the table and how different he is, that it would be like, that's the style I'd like to, you know, get in with and see what that's like. And I also thought that stylistically, I had a good shot in that fight, just being long and strong and being the bigger guy, but also so being quick and having good angles in defense. But yeah, that looks like one that I don't think is ever going to happen. And past fights, I always want to fight Oscar De La Hoya. In the early 90s, man, he was my favorite guy to watch. He was such a monster, such a machine. And I don't know, for some reason, I thought like that fight could have happened. I never expected Manny Pacquiao. Never thought that was going to be on my trajectory. Never thought that was a fight that was going to happen. You know, but for some reason, I had like, if you were like, oh, De La Hoya or Pacquiao, who are you going to? I bet you I'm going to fight De La Hoya. But that, you know, that obviously never happened either.
And then now looking forward now, is there somebody that you do want to fight, maybe whether it's next year, 2 years from now, whenever, that you look at it, that's the ultimate fight you want to fight before you check it?
It's hard to say because I don't know. Like I always say this is kind of like my go-to answer. Like the landscape of boxing changes constantly, and now it's like really, really in a question. But I still have a piece of that WBO belt, you know, in my heart. So that's really whoever's got that is kind of where I'm looking. I never lost the belt in the ring. I was stripped when I moved up to fight Manny Pacquiao. I stayed at welterweight for a few more fights, so I never had an opportunity to fight for that belt again. I never lost it. I'm undefeated at 140. So I feel that that belt, I have a stake to that title.
Okay, so I want you for a second to put on your punditry hat. Let's just take you out of the equation. You got Josh Taylor and Ramirez, sort of. Those are the two guys that are sort of left to unify. Between those two guys, who would you say would win that fight?
Hard to say because it's such a clash in styles. I think Josh Taylor is probably the more talented guy. He can do more things. He has less experience, and you can never count out Ramirez because he's just one of those guys. He does what he's told. You know, his style, his technique doesn't waver. He's not as flashy, he's not as maybe technical as you might think of as a boxer, but he's very technical actually in terms of his mechanics. The way he throws his punch, he throws a 1-2-3, it looks the same every, whether it's round 1 or round 12. Like his mechanics in the ring are very, very tight. So and he's also a guy that I think was very difficult to deter. He's got a game plan. He's been trained hard. He's ready to go, and he's going to go out there and he's going to try and make that work any way he can, even if he's down, even if he's hurt, even if he's whatever. So he's a really, really live champion. So I really like Josh Taylor's style. I like all the things that he can do. Lefty, righty, strong, boxes, jab. Body puncher. He's got a lot of tools, so I think that makes a great fight. I would lean towards Taylor because I usually go towards the guy who's got a little more like physical gifts and talents, and who can maybe box a little bit more. And also being a southpaw makes him that much more tricky, which kind of nullifies Ramirez's left hook.
Chris, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on. Your last parting shot for all the fans here in South Africa who know you've watched you fight and admire your work.
I appreciate you guys. Thank you for having me. If people weren't tuning in to see the things that we do, we wouldn't have the opportunity to do it. So the fans are very important, and I got to make it down to South Africa one of these days. And hopefully once the ban opens up.
Well, you have a place to stay. Rather. That has been Chris Algieri, the former WBO junior welterweight champion of the world, looking to reclaim that title, which he never lost, and he's still unbeaten in 140. Thanks for tuning in. This has been the Boxing Lockdown, powered by SA Boxing Talk. We will catch you again soon.